Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask on CYC. So we've become really good at balancing our check, savings and credit. But once we get married and have kids, that whole balancing skills in terms of our spirituality goes down the drain. So how do we bring that balance in our lives when it comes to service and church life? So tune into today's show as we have one of our youth on the show who are getting into this topic with us. So the phone number is 0416 551 292. Send your questions in, text in your questions, or give us a call and we'll answer a few questions live on the show. So today we have with us Ruby Sidris. Welcome, Ruby.
Hi, Mina. How are you going?
It's a pleasure having you.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So balancing our life in church and service. So that's the topic for today.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be an interesting one because it's I think it's one that I personally struggle with, and I think it's a very common issue that most of our youth struggle with, which is balancing in general. Before getting married, I think it was a struggle to balance between church and social life and family time and study and what have you. And then once you also add a level of, I don't want to say complexity, but it is a level of complexity of a relationship, whether it's an engagement or marriage or thereafter kids, that balancing act definitely hardens. So,
okay, so tell me about yourself. How long have you been married for?
5.5 years. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to just call my wife to double check, but it's 5.5 years. I'm
glad to get that right because we can't edit the show after we finish.
That's right.
So, before you got married, how many services were you involved in, and what were they?
Yeah, I guess my main service was Koya, which is Coptic Orthodox Youth Association. So for any non-Sydney viewers, it's the youth service arm of the Sydney Diocese, and that was a great service. It took a lot of effort, a lot of team effort, that is, and the spiritual reward that came from it was also great. I was also involved in Brothers and Sisters, which is it's a youth fundraising arm of the Copts, and the Copts aim to raise money to support the poor in Egypt. And then I was also involved in parish level services. So it was our Friday night youth meeting, and I think as with any servants, you always end up getting called into events. We've got New Year's celebration, we've got Nowruz, we've got an overseas trip to Thailand, so you have the ad hoc services here and there. So 3 main services plus events throughout the year.
So these services pretty much consumed most of your life,
Yeah, they did, and to be honest, the satisfaction that I know our topic today is not service, but it goes without saying, the satisfaction that came from service was far beyond any satisfaction that I received from any other facet of my of my life, whether it's education and even social with my friends and so on. So time-wise, yes, it did consume quite a bit of my personal time, I guess.
Bang, you met the woman of your
dreams. Bang, I met the woman and this went on.
Yeah. So
and then the balancing act starts.
So how did you transition into that?
Look, that transition wasn't easy. One thing that really worked to our advantage, but that's both Nora, my wife, and myself, is that we were in constant consultation with our parish priest, and that played a crucial role in setting our expectations of what's to come. And if there is any advice that I would give to any engaged couples leading towards marriage, is make sure that you have a spiritual guide throughout the journey, because it's very, very easy to focus on the bells and the whistles and organising the church and the reception if you choose to have one, and it's very, very easy to lose track of what's beyond the wedding date. We were really blessed to have a parish priest to really set our expectations. So I think then back to your questions, how did I manage to transition? I think because we've had that, we've had an 80% picture painted to us of what's to come. I think it was fairly manageable. Now, in saying that, we definitely had a lot of teasing issues, as I think any couples do. And it's unrealistic to expect for any couples to think that from day one, bang, everything is cool and they're just going to go with it. So back to your question, transition was manageable. There was a few surprises here and there that we needed to realise that, hang on, we need to adjust our life. Either I need to adjust or my wife needs to adjust in order to reach a level of compromise that we're both happy with, but would work best for our family unit. So thank God the transition from before marriage into marriage was quite manageable. Yeah.
Did you find it easier? I don't know if you used this, but if you have, did you find it easier to incorporate your partner into your service so you both serve together?
Yeah. It goes back to the choice. The choice is so crucial, and each person has an inherent bias, I guess, when they come to choose a life partner. Some go for beauty, some go for wealth, some go for a godly person. And of course, it doesn't mean that you can't have a mixture of those three facets into a person. But I think in they come to a partner, there's always one that's a little bit higher than the other. I would love to marry a rich guy. I'd love to marry a beautiful woman, and so on. Now, again, back to your question, it was I was very blessed to have a very godly person that I chose to be my life partner, and that made it very, very easy. And again, if there is any advice that I can, I guess, give to any people that are sort of at that stage of life, is money comes and goes, wealth fades away, but choosing that godly person is what's going to stay. It will become the foundation of your family unit. It will become the foundation of your kids' upbringing, and they will then impart that onto their family. So choosing a godly person is crucial.
St. John Chrysostom put that very nicely when he said our goal is heaven, and by choosing our partner, we're choosing someone that will help us get to
absolutely
heaven. Yeah.
And it's so easy, especially in this materialistic world, it's so easy to lose focus. And as soon as people say wedding, the first thing that comes to mind is all the material, I guess, experiences of the wedding. The wedding dresses and the day and where's the honeymoon, where are you guys going to live? And I guess, in the background somewhere lies a question yet to be answered, which is that person the right person to take you to heaven? Is he or she the right person to support each other in this journey of this world, to take you and your kids up to heaven? And look, I was very blessed with that, but again, it would be great to see our youth putting that question at the forefront of their mind, as opposed to a background issue just to tick a box when Abuna asked me, or when Mum asked me to have and you think, she's really good, just to tick a box. Church attendance was never an indication of a godly person. And I guess that's where, back to what I was saying before, the importance of having a mentor, a spiritual mentor through the stages of engagement is crucial to set that foundation and expectation.
Does it have to be a confession father? Because I hear there are courses out there, engagement courses, where you can do.
Yeah, I am so glad that our diocese have, I think it's called a an engagement course. I attended a 1-day or a 2-day seminar in addition to our sort of weekly or fortnightly catch up with our parish priest. They were absolutely crucial to, again, setting the expectations. We had people who have been married for 20, 30, 40 years getting up there and telling us the real story of marriage. I.e. there's so much more to come after the wedding day. All couples will have issues, all couples will fight, all couples will realise that it's hard work to compromise. But it's so much easier to make that compromise when someone who lived through it shares that experience with you. So again, back to your question, it's I absolutely enjoyed those courses. And it's great to see that our diocese, I know a lot of dioceses around the world now, I think it's now a prerequisite in order, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's now a prerequisite in order for the priest to approve your holy matrimony is have you attended the premarital course. So that was great.
Yeah, in some dioceses it is prerequisite, but not all dioceses.
Not all dioceses. Okay, yeah. Well, it'd be great to see. Because the benefit that came from it was absolutely crucial. Now we do have other organisations such as Young Coptic Families and Parenting. The name escapes me at the moment. But one of them focuses more on husband and wife relationships and kids also. And then the other one. These organisations offer impeccable service that's crucial for couples.
Yeah, and I understand, once you get married, obviously the first year is going to be hard, so keeping involved in church life and church service, and the church does serve youth in this nature to help them,
Yeah, absolutely. And look, our church is so rich in so many different areas, and but you know how the Bible verse says, the harvest is plenty, but the labourers are few. There's always so many services out there for us as youth to be involved in, no matter at what stage of youth. Even though I think I'm borderline about to fall off that line, but there's always so many services out there, and anyone just needs to go to the parish priest or look for a service, and there's so many hidden services as well. I think and I've heard this before, that as soon as couples get married, some couples say, "Oh, we feel like there's no service for us," and they feel, "Look, we feel maybe we're a little bit too old now for youth meetings on Friday night, and we're not old enough to be part of the Sunday school parents group," and there's a little, I guess, gap in service which some couples feel. And honestly, in reply to that is, if you want to serve, you only have to ask. And it's great to now see young Coptic families also serving together. So, we have all the guys that just got married in the last 5 years, we catch up, and even that community of, I guess, socialising with people at the same stage of life is crucial, which was one of the advice that our parish priest gave to us as well. It's really hard to stay, of course no one is asked to leave their friends, once you get married. No one says, stop talking to your friends of past because they're not married. Of course not. But everyone needs to stay in touch with their friends, and there's so many benefits come from that. However, at the same time, there's a crucial benefit that comes from socialising with people within the same stage of life that you're at. And that we, I guess, saw later on. Yeah. So.
Okay, so during your transition stage and after you got married, were there any services that you had to sacrifice?
Yeah, look, when we first got married, I think it was status quo. I maintained, the 3-4 services that I was involved in. It became, on lighter duties, certain things had to drop, because at the end of the day, your household is a service, and it'd be wrong to sacrifice a service that you are the main custodian of, which is your household, for another service that can be shared around other servants. So to answer your question, the first year or so, not really. I think I'll just reduce services here and there. Once the kids came, that was a different ball game altogether.
So just a reminder to our viewers, please send your questions to 0416 551 292. Send us a text, or if you're courageous enough, give us a call, and we'll answer your question live right here on the show. I've got a question, audience. Ask, do you think be overbearing? What should priority be if it is? I
assume priority between Service can be well, yes. Service is not meant to be easy. Service is meant to be painful. So painful in the sense of, there's so much joy that comes from service, of course, but sometimes, I don't know if what I'm saying is theologically correct, but I'm just speaking from my personal experiences. The services that sometimes sit heaviest on the heart, on your heart, and I think everybody was involved in a service that, sometimes when you're called to do an X service, there's a sigh inside of you that go, do I have to kind of, mentality kicks in. I think those services are the ones that once you push through and, with the grace of God and, with the push that the Holy Spirit gives you, once it is achieved at a level that is befitting of God's name, the blessings that come from that service is enormous. To the question asked, a compromise, is that correct? If where the servant is to choose between the service, external, should always the service. To the point that husband or the father of the house, I am called to be the priesthood of the house, and so mainly in charge of myself and my wife, but the church sets that role to me as a primary carer for my family, and that takes priority over other services. And that is not just my personal view. I really enjoy listening to sermons from His Grace Amba Paula, who's sort of the world-class Coptic church relationship advice person, and also Abuna Dawood Lamay. And both of them give beautiful relationship seminars that I'll highly encourage any couple to listen to. And both of them mimic that same view that I just said. If a person is to choose between serving home and serving externally, home should always take priority. And of course it needs to be done in good faith. Like it needs to be not the wife trying to manipulate the situation. I'm just saying wife, for example, to manipulate a situation where she'd like the husband to invest more time for another reason, but at home. But in good faith, which goes back to choosing a godly person. In good faith, if people, the husband and wife, to choose about outside or inside is always more important.
Sure.
Yeah.
How did your wife cope with you being out there serving?
Look, honestly, she was great support. She was always encouraging. End of the day, when I go out and serve, or I've got late midweek meetings and I come back late, she makes that decision. I'll stay home alone tonight, or I'll look after the kids alone tonight, which is more work. She's coming back from work already tired, and you've got to cook, you've got to bath the kids, you've got to put them to sleep, and so on. So to allow me, and I use the word allow because at the end of the day it needs to be a discussion, and is that okay? Yes, are you sure? It needs to be a discussion. A husband or a wife, whoever the servant is, should never impose their service on the other partner. And it would be so wrong for both services, the house and the husband comes and goes, look, well, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to look after the kids. I've got my service at church today. How could you say no to me serving the Lord? That's actually spiritual blackmail, if I could use that phrase. Because, buddy, your number one role is home, and your number two role is outside. And there's also a second layer of this. Dare I say, I'm not being critical of any service, but it plays a role sometimes in services which. Well, take me as an example. I might get a fake sense of satisfaction and achievement. When I go to a service and I'm running a meeting and I'm taking minutes and I'm telling people what to do. That sense of satisfaction that comes from that service maybe that's the hidden reason why I'm leaving my family, and I choose to go and serve in the name of, to serve the Lord, but I'm actually doing it for a personal, egotistical, purpose. So again, my wife was a great support, and on live TV, I'd love to thank her. Nora, you're doing great. Choosing a godly person. I'm going to keep going back to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to go for a quick break and we'll come back, we'll continue this great discussion.
Okay, great. Thanks,
you.
man.
So to our audience members, please, the phone number is 0416 551 292. So please send us your questions and we'll throw them at Ruby and see if he can answer it for you live on the show. Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
So welcome back to Ask. So today's discussion, we're talking about balancing your family life with the church and services. So welcome back, Ruby.
Thanks, Mina.
So Ruby, we talked about marriage before. So now let's bring kids into the picture.
Oh.
How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I've got 2 children, Paul, who's 4 years old, and Christian, who's 1.5.
Okay, so they're young kids and, those first couple of years are hard years.
Very hard.
So
It's like a truck hit you.
Yeah.
Look, it's transitioning into married life is one thing, and I think transitioning into parenthood is a different thing. It really tests your relationship, your husband-wife relationship, once kids enter the picture. The level of control that you would once have before having kids is over what happens at home is quite high, and hence making it a quite easy environment to live. We've got married. Recently we got married. We're now living under one roof, and my wife is a different person. I'm a different person, and no two people are alike. So when people say, "Oh, we're so similar" during engagement time, they're not similar. They just choose to look at what is similar and ignore to look at the differences. But the differences do come. At the end of the day, you've been for 25 years, I'm this kind of person, and for 25, 26, whatever years, my partner's a different person. And then when you try to mesh them into one household, there needs to be a time of adjustment. That adjustment period is manageable because you've got time, you could sit, you could have a chat to your wife, "Hey, I don't really like how you do this." And she'll say, "Look, well, could we do this a different way," and so on. Enter kids. You've got no time, you're lacking sleep, and you're starting a day and you've got work to go to. And when you start an entire day with lacking sleep, and then you need to make crucial decisions at work, and then you're back at home, you've got to make decisions at home, it really tests the robustness of your relationship between you and your wife. So, yeah, look, I don't mean to put a negative spin on it. Having kids has been absolutely the pinnacle of blessings in our household, and we love them dearly. I think any parent would attest to that. But from a relationship point of view, it's so easy sometimes to focus on day-to-day management and raising of the kids at the expense of investing in your relationship with your partner. So the game gets really tough at that point.
So let's add to that.
Okay.
Your spiritual life.
Yep.
Going to church the Sunday morning, where when especially when your kids were born, feeding times every 3 hours.
Yeah.
2 3 hours.
It's not like you've had kids before. That's exactly what it is, every 3 hours.
So you'd probably be on like 1 or 2 hours sleep. So then Sunday comes, or you have a service that night. You know what I mean, or something comes up that's spiritually involved.
Yep.
How did you deal with that?
Well, I guess it's all about priorities, and our priority as a Christian couple should always be to take our family, our entire family, to God, and the importance of setting a spiritual routine for children is crucial, and we should never disregard how much they absorb at a young age, and I mean young, not speaking kind of like I mean, whatever, a few weeks, a few months old. So look, it's so hard to go to church, to make it to Mass, to make it to, at least for the gospel as a bare minimum, sometimes it takes about 2.5 hours to leave home. So we could get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we struggle to leave by 8:30, and I mean struggle to leave by 8:30. Honestly, as soon as you have kids, you look at other parents with a lot of respect and a lot of appreciation. So it's all about priorities, and just week in and week out, Mass is non-negotiable. We just need to keep going. Yeah.
But your service has decreased?
Yeah, so from a service point of view, yes, it has. So I had to pull back. I mentioned Koya before, so that was one of the services that I had to pull back from. And also, even with brothers and sisters, I had to pull back on that. And I think the focus really becomes family time. And then once they come of age, we sort of move back into different services. I was still involved in some services at a parish level and some other miscellaneous side services. But the short answer is yes. So if service was up there with I guess, a single person, you get married, it goes down a little bit. You have kids, it really goes down when they're young, in the hope that it goes up a little bit more once they come of age.
Okay, on topic, I know you've just answered this, but one of the audience members is asking a really funny question. They're asking what happened to Koya Man.
Koya Man is still here. He's just got kids and the receding hairline. That's Koya. I've got so many beautiful memories with Koya, and we had such a beautiful group of servants. And I'm actually quite a nostalgic person. So many times I think of the good old Koya days. And I think Koya is doing great work at the moment as well. With any service, it is so wrong to make one person, one individual, the service. And with any service, it needs to be passed on. And I think Koya now is doing remarkable work, stuff that we back in our days didn't dare to. Like a stand-up comedy night that's taking place in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, just to make it clear for the audience members, if they just had children and they're finding it hard to serve, it's okay to pull back?
Pull back, yes. Totally out of service, no. Look, it's very hard having newborn kids at home, and everyone needs to appreciate that. Starting with the husband, because it's usually the husband that goes, you've been home all. I mean, to be honest, as I mentioned before, I listened to Abunador with Nama's sermons, and a very common, phrase that sometimes is used by husbands when they come home from work is like, to the wife, well, you've been home all day, like how hard could it be? You've got a baby, but you've been home all day. I've had work. And I think what those partners need to understand, that the husbands or whoever's out working, is honestly, it's harder work being at home with a child than out in employment. So I guess, I don't know if I totally moved away from your question, but I guess the point that I was getting to is it's perfectly fine for service to reduce. It's never fine for the entire household not to have any service. Yeah.
Okay. So did you ever feel the pressure of juggling family, service, and even focusing on your own salvation?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how did you deal with that?
Honestly, it's the time pressures of work by itself is huge, let alone once you add a relationship and once you add kids. In reply to your question, it's priorities. You simply got to prioritize. You can only run around like a headless chook for so long until you realize that you're doing a half-hearted job at service, a half-hearted job at being a husband, a half-hearted job at being a parent, and you're actually not satisfying any of the three parts of your life. Once you sit down and prioritize, and your family salvation should always come as number one, comes the answer to your question. Well, I need to invest X amount of hours, or I need my weeknights to be with my family, and maybe weekends I could spend with service. Hence, any service during weeknights needs to go. If I'm at work all day, I want to be with my kids, having dinner. I want to do the bedtime routine with them. I want to make sure that we sit together, we read the Bible together before they go to sleep. That's more important for me than being part of a service outside. Yeah, so once those priorities are set, I think it's a lot easier to make decisions from that point.
Okay. So speaking on focusing on family salvation, I know when your kids are baptized, the priest makes you say an oath that
Yeah.
I'll look after their salvation. So how are you passing down Christian values to your children? I know they're still young, but
Yeah.
they're still absorbing quick.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think one of the parenting seminars that I went to is seeing him, like when Paul was 2-3 months old, we used to cradle him to put him to sleep. We used to sing hymns to him, and that was one of the advice that one of the servants told us. And believe it or not, they're now the hymns that he sings up until this day. Kids absorb at a tremendous level at a young age. Being surrounded, and by no means am I saying that my household is a perfect Christian household, but I'm saying things that I think would be beneficial is surrounding the kids with spiritual contents. Whether it's hymns when you're putting them to sleep or in the background, reading the Bible at night, before sleep. That's like the bedtime routine. You brush your teeth, you go to the bathroom, then you sit down, let's read the Bible, we pray, we go to sleep. Whatever's done at such a young age will become their norm going forward. And we pray that it then becomes a norm for their future families. The most important, as kids grow up from, it's time to read the Bible, time to pray and so on, the most important, feature that plays part after that is, the monkey see, monkey do method.
Yeah.
If I'm reading to my son about the story about the Good Samaritan, and then the next day he sees me, someone stuck on the side of the road, and I just zoom by, and he said, "Well, hang on, what's wrong with that car?" I'm like, "Oh, his car's broken down." At that point, he just realised that I don't practice what I preach. Yeah, and and can I just tell you, it's hard work, because you actually realise how much of a true Christian you are when you have a beautiful, pure person next to you.
Just watching every.
They're just watching every move and say, "Hang on, but aren't we meant to?" And you're like, "Yeah, you're right. I was about to do it. I was just reversing." And so it's leading by example. Leading by example. How we speak at home, how we deal with others from different religions, with different races, with people in need, with the poor. How we gossip or not at home, whatever we do is how the kids will be also.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions that came in from the audience members. The first question that came through is asking, when deciding which service to keep and which one to drop, what should I look for? Priorities. There is no more important service than another, from my personal point of view. It would be very hard to say, well, is it more important to serve the youth or is it more important to serve the poor in Egypt? There's an emotional benefit that you say, oh no, well, of course the poor in Egypt. And then you go, okay, but I'm also a deacon, so is it important to now serve the poor in Egypt, or is it important for me to go and clean the carpeted church so it's nice and clean for the Sunday morning mass? We say, no, hang on, well, I guess the church is more important. Honestly, you'd be doing yourself a disfavour if you're trying to pressure yourself with which service is more important. I think it's what fits. Again, it depends on which stage of life you're at. If you're at that crucial stage, which you can only offer so little of time investment towards service, it needs to be at whatever fits in your family routine. So if I'm only free on Tuesday nights, well, which service fits on Tuesday nights? And I think that's how it's going to be played. If you have ample time and your kids have grown up or you're not married yet, I think it's a conversation with your parish priest or your confession father. Okay. Yeah. So the next question that came in said, should we push our kids into service? They're 17 and 20 years old.
Ooh. I don't know if I'm experienced to answer that question. I could answer that question from a past 17-year-old person, but not from a parent point of view. And from someone who's been 17 years old before, I think the answer is no, especially at that age. As a 17-year-old, I remember myself as a 17-year-old, and I just want to rebel. If my parents say right, I'm going to do left. And at that stage, if you're going to say no, well, you're going to have to go and do Urbano, you're going to have to go and do Sunday, no, too young for Sunday, I don't know, cleaning the church. you're just going to say, no, sorry, like the fact that you're forcing me to do X, I'm going to intentionally do Y. I think what works in that age is giving options. I guess explaining the importance of service and showing how people serve. And even though I'm making the assumption that that person might be the typical rebellious 17-year-old, just from the tone of the question, should be forced. That means there must have been a prior conversation saying the child saying, I don't want to serve. So with that assumption in the background, I think focusing on emotions always goes a long way. To take that 17-year-old through maybe a cancer ward at one of the local hospitals, and just for a walkthrough and say, by the way, this is one of the services that our church does. We visit sick people at hospitals. It's very, very hard for a 17-year-old to walk through a cancer ward, see other 17-year-olds was not many years left for them, and to go home and not even think about that. So I think it's more the shock of emotional need for service as opposed to forcing people into service. Yeah, and the same goes with cleaning the church and like a midweek. Some 17-year-olds might say, "No, I don't want anything to do with the church." Well, you know what? I'm going to get you a key Tuesday morning. Why don't you go in by yourself and just clean the church? It's just you and God and the church. There's nothing more beautiful than a midweek clean of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have time for one more question.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so how do we keep making Christ our number one while looking after our family?
Yeah, wow. That needs another show. Keeping Christ number one, that is a day in, day out kind of struggle. That is not just, let's put a picture of Christ and say, Christ is number one. That is just everything that you do. Remember those little, handbands that we used to have, like what would Jesus do, WWJD? That needs to be in everything that we do, how we speak, how we, just everything. For example, when, I know no one calls it home anymore because it's all on the mobile phones, but one example that Abuna Dawood Lama gave in one of his sermons is when people used to call it home and someone say, Auntie Rose is calling, Mum. And then the mother used to say, tell her I'm not here or tell her I'm busy. You just told that child that it's okay to lie for the rest of your life. And that's what it comes down to. The parents are being watched for their every single move, the tone of voice, the how genuine they are with their interactions. And as I mentioned before, gossiping or not, language, being truthful, and so on. Always weaving Christ into every conversation goes a long way. And thank God, like we even see it with Paul now, where all of a sudden he might say, when is Jesus going to come down from heaven? I miss him. and it's so beautiful because there's sometimes people pass away and he goes, where's that person? We go, he's up in heaven now, he's with Jesus. And he goes, where's Jesus? I want to see him. So we show him a picture. And he goes, well, I want to bring Jesus down. I want to go to heaven. I want to go see Jesus. And it's so beautiful because we just sprinkle the word Christ in every conversation that we try to anyway, in every conversation that we have. Yeah, so formal sit down, it's now Christ time, I'm going to tell you how to be a Christian, only goes so far. It's the casual conversations in the car, it's when you're in Westfield and you've got him in the trolley and you say, instead of saying, be quiet, I'm doing my shopping, just have a conversation and say, I don't know, how sweet do you think Jesus is? Do you think it's going to be sweet as this sugar? Just little stuff. And the more you sprinkle Christ in, dare I say, petty conversations, the more that child will grow to feel like Christ is part of his life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Mina.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Great, thank you.
And thank you to our viewers out there who tuned into today's show. Just a reminder, for next week's episode, we're going to talk about politics in society. As Christians, should we get involved? Should we take these politics out there seriously? So stay tuned as we have a politician who will be our guest on the show next week. So the phone number is 0416 551 292. I'm Mina Ibrahim from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.